Over to you, Zach.
Fab. Thanks, Chanel, and good morning, everyone. Aware there are probably quite a lot of people on leave as we're now in the depths of August. Um, but yeah, as a quick intro for any of you who don't know me, which is probably everyone to be fair, I'm Zach. I'm the interim delivery manager in the product team at MHCLG in digital planning. I have the great pleasure of leading this meeting today. Um, I won't pretend to have a significant idea of how everything works or indeed how any of these products actually work. So, without any further ado, I will bring in the PlanX and BOPS teams. The agenda for today is PlanX have a couple of items they're going through. And that'll be 10 minutes of the actual show and tell plus 10 minutes to Q&A. And then the BOPS team have 3 items to go through. And that will be a 25-minute item. But I shall break into it. So if Jess from OSL, do you want to hop along and I will just let me know if you want me to change slide or anything. But yeah, over to you, Jess.
Good morning, all. I'm Jess. I work at Open Systems Lab. I'm a developer of PlanX, and we have 2 things to share today, very much on behalf of the team. One is a sort of public-facing feature, which is the progress bar, and the other is an editor-side feature, the subscription page. So next slide, please. So progress bars. Since we first started building PlanX, I think it's fair to say that one of the most common sort of user research pieces of feedback that we hear is, I want to understand how long this application is going to take me to complete. And this is especially true for sort of some of the longer statutory application types that we support, things like apply for planning permission, apply for a lawful development certificate, etc. Basically, yeah, folks are looking for some type of progress bar, right? Whether that's I'm on question 5 of 55, so I know how far along I am, I'm 30% of the way through, etc. I think this is sort of the common perception that people have in their mind when they're thinking of a progress bar. This is a really tricky one, though, for us to implement because PlanX is sort of based on building dynamic forms, not a static number of questions. So our prior iterations of sort of helping folks understand this idea of progress or sort of where you are has included introductions of sections within services. Later, we sort of added the ability to customize and add descriptions to each of these sections, but we were still hearing this request for progress. We still weren't quite meeting expectations. So next slide, please. So this is a question we've been thinking about for a long time. We've been gathering a lot of other GovUK design system examples, thinking about how others do this. But some of the big design considerations that we have to keep in mind in PlanX is that as a user is going through an application, we will only show them required questions. There's never an option to sort of skip an optional question in PlanX because we only show you required things that you have to answer. That means that based on every answer you give us, we're able to compute exactly what you need to see next. The side effect of this is that it really complicates this idea of any type of page or percentage-based indicator because we don't actually know that number up front, and it changes every time you give us a new answer. So even though we really like some of these GDS examples, where you can see this is a very familiar section to the style that we use also, here they have the addition of like, this section has 31 pages, this one has 24. We knew that still didn't quite work for our dynamic forms. So next slide, please. So the latest solution that we have recently landed on is enabling editors to configure a length for each section. So one of the powers of PlanX is that it is not a static form and that it is built and designed by editors and planning officers. who both bring their local expertise to this service as well as sort of encode policy as code, right? So while we cannot sort of definitively say every user is going to see this many pages within this section, and that is because, for example, in the property section, a user who is in a house versus a user who is in a flat is going to see different questions, right? Or these different permutations of things. A user who is doing a change to a commercial property, again, possibly going to see different questions than users in residential ones. But we can allow editors to estimate the relative length of a section, and then we can weigh those accordingly for every section that we know is in the service. And this actually has a really cool added benefit. If we were just counting the number of pages within a section, we would not actually be accounting for the complexity of different page types, versus this methodology does let us account for that. And we can take into account other feedback that we have about PlanX, which is that we know folks spend more time on pages like file uploading, drawing, some of the more complex interactions in PlanX, rather than that may take them the same amount of time to complete as maybe 5 simple questions in a row, right? So we can now sort of account for that length in both a more qualitative sense than quantitative alone. So this is what it looks like for editors. And the next slide, please. And the public-facing side, so users of PlanX now, you still have your sections as you're used to seeing them, the total number of sections, but now at the top, you have this really nice, clear visual progress bar, where the solid color is what you have completed so far. The hatched color is the length of the section that you're in, and then that sort of outstanding uncompleted progress bar is the length of your remaining sections. And so what this does is it gives us both, I still have this quantitative piece of information, which is that I have 8 sections total, but I also now have this visual weighted progress of the sections that I'm in. So for example, in a real service, it may be very possible that even though you're in section 4 of 8, the sort of visual progress may be less or more than 50%, depending on like the length of those sections, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is a new progress bar coming to all PlanX services that use sections. So that's basically all of our major submission services. Please keep an eye out for it in the coming weeks, and you'll see it rolled out on live services soon. Are there any questions about this part before we move to the editor side? Great, I'll keep going then, and don't hesitate to ask later. So next today, as you may know, PlanX is a platform for building digital services. So that means we both have the public-facing digital forms, which the progress bar applies to. We also have the editor side of the platform, which is where planning officers and council folks are logging in to build and manage services. Something that we have sort of coming up this autumn is councils are preparing to pilot the new pricing model for PlanX, which notably is introducing a service charge. And this service charge will allow LPAs to share some of the costs of running PlanX with applicants for applicable applications. We know, though, that by introducing a service charge, the service charge is going to be collected by the LPA on behalf of OSL and then transferred to OSL quarterly. Even just saying that sentence, it's a little complex. We know this is going to introduce some coordination with finance teams. Many of the folks who are using the PlanX editor are folks in their planning department or digital services department. They are not necessarily the finance team directly, right? So this feature aims to make it as simple as possible for the folks who are using the PlanX editor to do that internal coordination and workflow with their finance teams to pass along service charges every quarter. Next slide, please. So what we have introduced, now directly in the editor, in sort of your team workspaces, where you're used to having things like your settings, your design configurations, where you check your submissions and your feedback and your analytics, you'll now have a new subscription page. This subscription page is only viewable to folks who are members of your own team. You cannot see the subscription pages of other teams. And on this page, you can clearly view the total amount of service charges collected each quarter, each financial year, as well as per service. And then we're ensuring that you can download sort of your raw payment records for any custom reporting, custom date ranges that your specific finance team might want to do in addition to this. These are all test numbers here. No councils are currently live with service charges yet, but this is an example of sort of what it will look like once this feature has been in place for sort of multiple fiscal years. You'll always have the ability to kind of toggle over between that. We'll retain sort of this high level service charge data indefinitely. So you'll always have historic data there. And then next slide, please. And a really important sort of piece of context around these service charges and why we always want to make sort of your total collected service charges really clear is that these sort of feed into discounts that you can be eligible for future renewal costs of PlanX. So also on this subscription page, not only are you tracking your service charges collected, but we'll also show you your progress towards the threshold needed to unlock your discount towards future renewal costs of PlanX. And the big idea here is that if enough people are using your services, PlanX can pay for itself in like the medium or long term, which we hope is a really nice incentive. So yeah, on this discount here, you'll see sort of your service charges year to date, on a little gauge up until that threshold. Once you've met the threshold, you'll see that it becomes sort of, we'll show you your eligible discount on your next renewal. Right now, the subscription page has all of the data about your service charges and your discount eligibility. In the future, we're hoping to sort of centralize even more information about sort of your PlanX billing, so your contract renewal dates, your contract renewal costs, invoices, things that right now we know are kind of disparately handled between a mix of emails between our teams, the Notion CRM, as well as now the editor. But we're really hoping on the direction towards sort of a more one-stop shop in the editor, making sort of your PlanX software as a service subscription as clear as possible and all the information you need there to communicate with your finance teams. Any questions about this?
Excuse me, I have one, Jess. It's John Drinkwater.
Hi, John.
And forgive me, I was distracted. You may have just given the answer to this and I missed it. I apologise. And it may be a longer term thing. I've recently become aware of one of the complications around invalidations for fees being that a lot of LPAs offer a significant discount for people who are registered as disabled and can provide that information, that disability exemption piece. Is that something that they'll be able to handle within this new feature set at this stage?
So this is sort of two separate things. So in PlanX, for statutory services, we have a dynamic fee calculator, which is how we come up with your planning fee for the service. That is where things like sort of disability and resubmission exemptions or reductions for things like parish councils are applied. The service charge being introduced will only apply to applications that have a base planning fee of £100 or more. So for example, if you are doing a statutory application that maybe has a base planning fee of £300, but then you qualify for a disability exemption, PlanX will know that, and your planning fee is then sort of zeroed out because you qualify for the exemption. The service charge is therefore not applicable to that application, would not show up on this sort of internal admin page then.
Thank you, Jess. That's brilliant.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Disability is an example of an applicant-facing discount, I guess, while this discount is actually sort of the council-facing, like how you actually procure PlanX discount.
That was kindly expressed and hid my ignorance. Thank you very much.
Oh no, it's fees are complicated. Yeah. Anything else? Do you think there's a risk of turning the 10K in-service fees into a target for councils? We hope that it just feels like a goal of working towards this. We know that councils have different goals of when they plan to introduce service charges. I'm not sure I have a ton more to say on that. I'm not sure if Sylvia or Alistair from PlanX are on the call and have more to say on that.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, very similar to what you were saying, Jess. I think this discount was very much introduced with the idea of aligning incentives in a way and sort of creating that incentive for a council to go live with launch services that include, use PlanX as much as possible, including services that include a service charge, and then sort of being able for PlanX to being able to really pay for itself in the medium term. So yeah, it's just a matter of sort of aligning incentives rather than sort of creating any kind of target or anything like that. We also work very closely with all the councils that sort of have adopted PlanX. So we've sort of co-created this with them very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sylvia. I'll read the next question in the chat, which is, in a similar vein to John's question, Planning Portal currently waives submissions made by local authorities. Will this apply with PlanX? So again, just to reiterate, I guess we are only applying the service charge for statutory application fees of £100 or more pre-VAT. Councils can choose to also introduce the service charge on discretionary services they're running on PlanX, such as pre-applications that have an associated fee. Again, that service charge would only apply if the base fee is more than £100. Councils on PlanX can also choose to not introduce a service charge yet. Really, that service charge is just there as an option if you would like to be able to work towards these discounts, etc.
And yes, totally would second what John was saying in the chat. I think it would be a bit redundant for the LPA to sort of self-charge themselves and then get the discount at the end. So I don't think we've accounted for that specific option, but essentially it's probably a minority of submission, and it's definitely something that we can you can skip essentially.
Yeah. Great, thanks all. Feel free to add any other questions to the chat and we'll keep an eye on them async, but otherwise that's all we have today from the PlanX side. Thanks so much, Zach, for driving slides, and I'll pass over to BOPS.
Fab, thank you, Jess. And yes, the BOPS team, I think you guys are up next with task modeling, an enforcement update, and pilot plans.
Cool. Yeah, that's me. Hey everyone, I'm actually Ben B, so it says Benny there, but it's close enough.
Sorry,
I'm one
Ben.
of the developers. That's right. I'm one of the developers working on BOPS. Next slide, please, Zach. Okay, so today I just wanted to give a slightly different type of update, and I thought it would be useful to take a few minutes just to walk through some architectural changes we've made to how we handle tasks and case records in BOPS, and why it matters for the product and ultimately all the officers who will be using it. So this came up when we started building out enforcements. We realized we had an opportunity to rethink how we set up the tasks in BOPS, not because the old approach was broken by any means, but because we'd learned a lot from building out planning. So as a team, we decided to approach this really focusing on like reusability and consistency across the case types and allowing us to have better insights into how tasks perform. So that's what led us from moving tasks from code into the database. And I'll run through quickly what that means and why it's a positive step forward. Next slide, please, Zach. Okay, so when we first built planning, tasks were defined directly in the code, and that worked to get something out the door quickly, and it was great at the time, but it made changes a bit slower and harder to reuse across different areas. So for example, adding or adjusting tasks meant a code change and a deployment, which slowed down our iteration and meant we weren't always super consistent with the user experience. Also means that we couldn't easily query tasks to see how they were being used or whether they were actually adding value for officers. So as we've moved into building enforcement, we want to take an approach that could work across any case type, whether that's planning enforcement, appeals, building control, and whatever else, without having to reinvent the task each time. Next slide, please. So the solution we decided was for data-driven tasks. So now all the task definitions will live in a database instead of the code base. And that gives us consistent patterns for things like statuses, ordering the tasks and grouping similar tasks. We also have a single source of truth for task lifecycle handling. An important one also is the historical integrity. So cases always show the exact tasks they had when they were created. And so there's no retroactive changes. So let's say in a year's time, you want to go back to a case and see what state it was at the time and what the officer had to go through. Those tasks will remain unchanged. And because now tasks are data, we can better query and analyze them to see what's working or not working. So we can run metrics. John might be happy about that, about what tasks are being performed well by officers or maybe what's being left out. And we can do some clever insights on that. And by enabling that on the API for reporting and integrations. And lastly, we can make changes without a deploy, which means a lot faster and lower cost iterations. So that's all very positive. Next slide, please, Zach. So what impact does this have for the product development? Well, we're going to improve consistency and reusability. So shared patterns will reduce bugs and simplify maintenance. And so this will then enable speed and scalability. We can adapt workflows for new case types and councils without any heavy rework and make faster changes and close feedback loops quicker. This will ultimately lead to increased innovation, so easier to test like new task orders, how we want to position on the page, see if that makes any impacts, and enable us to roll out different services a lot quicker, such as pre-apps. So I guess it's a relatively small technical change, but it's a big enabler for how quickly and confidently we can evolve BOPS going forward. And just a final point around compliance and transparency. So now everything lives in a database. There's going to be a clear audit trail of the exact tasks in the place at the time they were conducted. Cool, that's it from me. Happy to take any questions. If not, I'll probably hand to Tom, I think is next.
Ben, I've got a quick question if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's just understanding possibilities. I am indeed loving this approach. Thank you. So I thought I'd use the words to say that. Just as I'm thinking it through, one of our key challenges, of course, is resource time recording, right? And so I just wonder if you had any immediate thoughts on whether this. Did I hear you say we got an option there for sort of what is the effectively equivalent to timestamp logging for particular events within the process?
Yeah, so now each task will have like a started at time, completed at time, and you can see whether they've actually been completed or not. All the statuses will be very consistent across the different tasks. So you could run sort of like an aggregate report on what tasks are being completed quickly, maybe what tasks aren't being used at all, and whether sort of ordering the tasks on the page enables officers to like perform those tasks more efficiently.
It'd be. I'll just leave a comment and nothing more. It'd be really interesting to, once that's up and running, and if you like, live in the pilots we're running through. It'd be really interesting to look at that data and see if there's any way we can infer time resource time as opposed to elapsed time from that. In other words, just look at the places where we think there's as officer activity on a job. So I'm just sharing where that's taking my thoughts right now rather than anything else. But thank you, it's brilliant.
Well, great. Yeah, happy to talk a bit further offline.
Ben, there was a question, or Stephen asked to hear a bit more about audit trails. Stephen, I don't know if you want to sort of ask that, because there's a follow-up question, is that all tasks now? But maybe that makes sense to you, Ben. I wasn't.
Yeah, so it'll be all tasks going forward. And I guess when we get the opportunity, we can try and see how we could update all the planning applications to follow the same approach. Yeah, and so I think, yeah, audit trail will just mean you'll be able to see those like tasks as data. So whenever it was started by an officer, where it was completed at, and it will stay as a record, like when it was conducted in time. So even if you go back 2 years, you can see the exact task that was completed and by who.
Great, thanks. I think then if there's no further questions, I can pick up. Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about enforcement, so where we've got to. I'm going to give a brief demo and then give an update. So Zach, is it right if I take over screen sharing? So I can just do the...
Please do.
Demo. I will come back to you after that and we'll carry on with the slides. So we have been working on enforcement for BOPS. So you can see now this is so that's staging, but we have our planning section, we have our enforcement section here, and we're looking at here a list of enforcement cases. I am going to demo putting a case in, and we can just have a look at what that is like to receive that. So as you can see, we've got a historical location in Medway. I'm going to hopefully add what is a different historical location in Medway, and hopefully this will come through. So just give me a sec. So this structure of data is sort of based on the report breach, the information that's provided by PlanX's report breach service. So I think, let me just check, did I click it and it went through? Yeah, so we can see that I've put through that case, and let's come through into BOPS now. So when we have a look at that case, we can go in and see our breach report that's available and check the details of that that have been submitted by the complainant and what they've identified as a potential breach, when the work started, all the questions that have been collected by that, the report breach flow. And then in this case, I can have we've currently got it at the point where you can close it or make a recommendation and then update the description. So at the moment, we've worked on that ability to receive that case into BOPS, show the details that we've got with it, and then to take some quick actions. So I am going to stop sharing, and Zach, if you could bring back up the slides, please.
Of course, thank you.
Fantastic. And if we could have the next slide, please. So what I just showed you was the sort of receive a report and check sections of the enforcement workflow. What we haven't demoed for you today is the sort of reporting of a breach in PlanX and the receipt of that into BOPS. And then there are some bits we haven't yet built in BOPS around investigating that and potentially reviewing the investigation and taking any enforcement action as well. So that gives you an idea of sort of what the progress is to date for a sort of full end-to-end. There are already lots of report breach services that are in use by different councils on PlanX, but they haven't as yet been used with BOPS. And one of the challenges that some councils have with report breach is that there's a manual process to ingest those into their back office systems. And so one of the great things about BOPS is that, as we've shown, we can take that data and put it straight into BOPS, and there is no manual upload. Once a complainant has made the complaint, it appears there in your back office system. If we could have the next slide, please. One of the things is that we've got this kind of structure for our data. So we are looking forward to working, receiving sort of reported breach complaints from PlanX. But in theory, any form package that can provide us with that structured data could be used to input sort of enforcement complaints. We know that councils, for various reasons, sometimes good, sometimes bad, have ended up with multiple ways for enforcement reports to be made. And sometimes it can be politically sensitive to remove one of those routes because it's seen as sort of removing someone's ability to make a report. And so there is the ability potentially where you've got some sort of automated form that you are, for whatever reason, don't want to decommission, you can potentially input that into BOPS to process the enforcement case. Next slide, please. And so one of the things we want to sort of point out at the moment is that we've heard when we were doing our research around enforcements that where report breach is currently sitting there is this gap, this manual data entry gap that has to go into other systems. And the problem is, or one of the nature of enforcement as an activity is that there will be lots of reports that on the face of them are not things that need investigation because they just don't apply to enforcements. They might be complaints about bin collections or something else, where the council is offering a way for people to point something out to them. Not all of those reports, or certainly a significant percentage of those reports, are not relevant to enforcement or are very obvious on the face of it, things that don't require planning permission or are not likely to be enforceable or worth enforcing. And so what BOPS allows you to do is, rather than having to input all of those into your system to check them and then remove quite a lot very quickly, get to a process where a lot of that data entry is then sort of, you close the case very quickly and move on. We are able to provide a system where all the breaches come into BOPS, you can receive them, you can check them, do that initial check of does this need processing further? And then you can go down two pathways. You can data enter that into your existing system and carry on with your investigation and enforcement process, or you can use the inbuilt close and notify thing where your complainant will receive a notification that, in this case, their complaint or their report of a breach has not been considered, worthy of investigation for whatever reason, and they get a sort of closure to their process. And this reduces drastically the amount of data entry or the that you have. And so some councils already reduce this data entry by sort of reviewing the complaints before they go into the system, but then they don't necessarily have an easy audit trail. So with BOPS, you do get that ability to have the audit trail for things that are closed, and you get to sort of helps you manage the customer in terms of the resident who's made the complaint, manage their experience by giving them an explanation as to what's happened and why as well. So if anyone is interested in using BOPS as part of this workflow, do get in touch. We would be keen to sort of start piloting or trialing that with different LPAs. Next slide, please. And I think I might be handing over to Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Evans. I'm head of product at Unboxed. Yeah, I'm just going to talk briefly about pilots. I'm sure most people are aware that a number of councils have been running what we've been calling end-to-end pilot phases of PlanX, BOPS, and DPR. So processing real cases through the entire kind of end-to-end ODP product stack. We've had 4 councils piloting already for the last year or so. That would be Camden, Lambeth, Medway, and Barnet. I believe they've been kind of our guinea pigs, really, and they've been really showing us the way in terms of what's involved in actually piloting the product. We have 6 more councils who are planning to launch pilots in the next couple of months. That includes Gloucester, South Gloucestershire, Southwark, Newcastle, Gateshead, and Buckinghamshire. what we've realized is that piloting these end-to-end products is not a straightforward process. There's a lot of work to be done. There's various different work streams, different phases of the pilots. And so we've been trying to structure that a bit more clearly for new councils that will be onboarding to the pilots. Another thing is we want to really, a lot of the early pilots, the emphasis was on collecting data, so baselining the processes within the current systems and how long they might take, and then trying to compare them with the new processes through the product stack. However, there's been some challenges in that. With such a kind of complex process as the planning process, it's not a straightforward kind of let's stop doing it in one system and start doing it in another system. So what's been happening is there's been a kind of parallel process where we can test live cases through PlanX, BOPS and DPR, but then the councils are having to what we call dual processing. They're also having to update those records in their existing systems, so they've got a kind of a consistent record of what's been done. So we've been trying to work with councils to make that easier. And essentially, I think we want the focus of pilots not just to be about testing and feedback, or that's a really important part of it, but actually finding a path to the full adoption of the ODP products and services. So so the councils that are currently have been running the pilots and are currently onboarding have been really helping put together a list of all the many tasks that need to be completed in order to run a pilot. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so we're trying to help by ordering this in 4 clear phases of a pilot. I'm going to run through them very briefly. The first one is all about the commitment of not just the lead pilot lead, but other people within the organization. So there's a process of familiarization with the products. There's a lot of getting stakeholder buy-in. You need quite a lot of people within the council to be engaged, including IT and finance and various other people within the organization. You actually have to decide what you want to test. So we've got some options. A lot of councils have been testing LDCs and householders. We're also going to be testing pre-apps with the new group. And we've even been looking at single flat miners as a potential pilot as well. So working out what it is you're actually going to test and what's most appropriate for your council. And then there's kind of lots of procurement type conversations, so getting your license for PlanX set up, and effectively lots of legal agreements, data sharing agreements with 3 different products across the council. It involves quite a lot of work, and we have to acknowledge that. So what we're going to do is we've been laying out the tasks, which I'll just show you in a second, and giving some idea of when that phase is done. What will you have in place when that phase is done? If I go to the next one, setup and testing, that's really about configuring the system specifically. So we have to get not only the 3 products set up, but we need Gov Notify set up, we need Gov Pay set up, and there's quite a lot of configuration to be done within the products as well. We would then run through some historic cases to compare the process of doing it through the new stack with the old stack, and again really familiarizing enough officers or other people within the council to actually run an effective pilot, and getting them really comfortable with everything, addressing any early feedback, anything that may or may not work specifically for your council. And then, other stakeholders like consultees, just making sure they're statutory consultees, making sure they're aware of what needs to be done. The next phase we call in private beta. Now, this is a very specific term from the kind of government digital service standard, where this is about actually using the tool in the wild, as it were. And what we hope to achieve in there is we want to process a limited number of live cases. So we don't want to overload everybody. We know there's this dual processing to be done, but just a good number of live cases processed end to end. We're going to have regular meetings with the teams. One of the things we've heard is that the councils feel a little bit separated from some of the product teams, I would say BOPS particularly. So regular catch-up meetings every 2 weeks to really iron out any of the problems. We've got channels in place, Slack channels, for people to get ad hoc support as they need it through this phase. And then we've kind of reframed dual processing is now termed dual recording. So what we want people to be doing is doing the actual processing, the full processing of the case within the ODP products, and then just recording what needs to be recorded within the existing systems to meet standard requirements. We'll do a retrospective after 3 months, and then there's a 6-month really a decision whether it's working or not for the council, and then there's a decision to proceed. Now that would kind of be the end of the pilot, but if it has gone well and the council is happy to proceed, we then extend to this public beta, which means more officers within the council are onboarded, more types of application, higher numbers, volumes of applications, and then we'll really start to iron out all of the dual recording, so that at the end of a public beta we would expect the dual recording to be completely eliminated and cases just to be run within the ODP stack. So that's it's quite an ambition, but that has to be the pathway that we're trying to take people through. If you could just go to the next slide, please. Yes, again, we've identified, or the participants so far have identified these kind of 4 work streams of work. It's quite useful to think about this. The first bit is really about product implementation. So it's familiarization with the products. It's getting everything configured. It's training. It's gathering feedback, and of course that essential dual recording. Internal governance and processes. I don't think we underestimated the level of internal governance, but this is obviously managing those organizational requirements and constraints within the LPA, paving the way for that full adoption of the products. So procurement, data security, protection, a setup of those external dependencies, as well as kind of resource management and stakeholder engagement. Monitoring and evaluation is a really important part of the pilots. This is building the evidence base that supports the case for adoption, not just within your own LPA, but with other LPAs who will be maybe looking for evidence that it's working for someone else before they'll try it themselves. And the metrics group has a really clear set of data that we want to collect in order to understand and build that business case. And then finally, this is one that we definitely overlooked: the amount of work that needs to be done around publicity and communications. So this is raising awareness to generate a sufficient flow of applications through the ODP products. So it includes internal and external communications, engagement with different types of applicants, maybe agents are a source of test applications, or householders, and then communicating with the general public as necessary. I think just the final slide for me, please. Yeah, I just wanted to show you here. So this is what we're putting together, is a kind of a much clearer guideline for new councils who want to run a pilot, with a list of clear tasks, links to guidance. Every product has its own kind of onboarding guide, and they're well documented, but it is quite confusing going between them. So we're putting together a really clear guide for as you go through these different phases. We're putting in a kind of week by or 2 weekly sprint type cycle, but actually we know that some tasks can take as long as 6 months, and working out what you can do in what order, and as I say, what needs to be in place at the end of each of these phases. So we'll be sharing that with the pilot group to get that refined, and then that will be available as a much richer resource for new pilots as they're kicked off. That's me, I think. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martin, Tom, and Ben. Does anyone have any questions for the BOPS team at Unboxed?
There was just, Zach, something that Jono's last comment, he was asking around the connection between enforcement and planning, and actually if Ben B is still on the call, I think this is, again, some of the sort of architectural decisions we've made with how we're structuring things. So Jono, apologies, I'm just going to paraphrase your comment, but so Jono, you were asking about how well in planning enforcement modules would work together. because of sort of previous experiences with that not being necessarily very well linked together, and asking about how easy it would be to search across both planning cases and enforcement cases, for example, when you're doing a site history. And I suppose, Ben, I don't know if you want to talk about what sort of any sort of structural things that make it easier to do this in the way that we've ordered cases across, you know, planning and enforcement and potentially any other types of process that we might be undergoing.
Well, I guess the way we're ingesting data is through a schema. So most of the sort of data fields that are coming through enforcement and planning should be pretty consistent. So if there's any functionality we need to do for enforcement that has also been done for planning, then there shouldn't be any sort of mismatch in the way the data is set up. So that's a way we can sort of reuse it across the different modules.
Great. And yeah, and so I think just as the final question you asked, John, have you tested with dummy data? So because the only site history we have in BOPS is the cases we have there so far, and we maybe will come back another day to talk about some of the challenges around accessing existing site history. We haven't got that far yet, but it's definitely something we will look to do once we've got sort of enough real data to make it meaningful. There was a question from Natalie around future guidance being available on the ODP hub, and I think assuming that it's useful, because this was for pilot councils, so people are a bit more maybe, you know, who are already onboarded onto ODP as a program, then I think there's no reason why it couldn't be there, as long as it wasn't confusing people with other sort of first, you know, this is building on the foundations of getting your data ready and doing various other things on the pathway to getting the tools ready. Martin, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to say, we really, as I say, we appreciate there's lots of data out there and lots of information on different sites, and we do have 3 individual products, so there's a nuance to the way things are set up is quite different, but we want to make it as simple as possible. Like some people have said, there's so much information in different places, can we just have it in a single document? But essentially we'll start with the document, we'll get that right, and then we'll work out the best place to put it. And I would agree that the hub is probably the best place for that to be. But we'll get the content right first, and then we'll make sure it's available to everyone.
Fab. Okay. Does anyone have any final questions? Oh, Duncan.
Hi, Zach. Just on the back of what Martin was saying, we've benefited from just seeing some templated DPIAs and talk to other councils about delegated decisions. And so I think it'd be useful again just to have, you know, some sort of templated ones that LPAs could access, that they can just pull down, because we've obviously we've spoke to Gateshead, we've spoke to Medway, we've spoke to various people, and that's helped us when we wrote quite a substantial document. So I think, you know, it'd be good, I think, to structure that and have templates available.
I think that the list that you saw the top of there, Duncan, is definitely quite a long list. And within there are notes around where to find template DPIAs and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that is already captured, but thank you for that.
Okay, any more? Alternatively, we can wrap up slightly early if no one has any more questions. Okay, in that case, thank you very much, Martin, Tom, Ben, Sylvia, and oh, did we have another question? No. Okay. In that case, yeah, thank you very much to all of the teams who presented. As always, if you'd like to ask any questions, please do holler on the ODP Slack.
Sorry, I think we have a question. We have
we do have a question.
Is it Duncan? I'm sorry to be putting you on the spot.
I think it's Duncan's
it's a legacy hand.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
My hand didn't come down, sorry. You were right, Zach.
Thanks, Duncan. But yeah, as always, please do holler on Slack if there's anything you'd like to ask. But apart from that, thank you very much to everyone who spoke and everyone who asked a question and everyone else who attended. And I think our next session is, I'm not even going to pretend I know the date off the top of my head, but probably in 4 weeks' time. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks all.
Thank you, Zach.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.